Hey, everybody, the Irish Hammer here with you, continuing our quest for NFL win totals by division, and we're going to wrap up the AFC with this one. The AFC West. And of course, when you talk about the AFC West, the first team that comes to mind immediately is the Kansas City Chiefs. Division champion from last year and champions of the AFC. Of course, they lost in the Super Bowl to the Philadelphia Eagles. So they're looking to bounce back this season. If you can bounce back from 15-2, pretty amazing record, especially considering how many games they won by one score or less. So Vegas's win total projection is sitting at 11.5, with the juice at minus 130 to the under. So I'm a little confused by this line. Chiefs won 15 games last year, and yeah, I guess you could argue that they won a few of those that they probably shouldn't have for various reasons. But to drop from 15 to 11 and be 4 games worse than they were last year, I'm not sure how I feel about that. A little confused by this line. So let's dive in and take a look. So from a scheduling standpoint, Chiefs have got a pretty tough schedule. In fact, it's been ranked the 6th toughest schedule in the entire NFL for 2025. They get the NFC East and the AFC South. And outside of Houston, maybe, nobody really scares me out of the AFC South. But the NFC East, potential there for some trouble with, of course, the defending champion Eagles and also playoff team Washington Commanders. And there's always that team down in Dallas that's lurking around that could maybe catch lightning in a bottle, but they still have Dak. So the NFL didn't do them any favors with the teams that they're going to play on their schedule. They did do them some favors where they're going to play those teams. In fact, they get the Eagles, the Ravens, and the Lions all at home. So it's hard to imagine the Chiefs not being favored in at least 2 of those games, right? The Eagles, one could argue that could be a pick 'em or, a really short line. But most likely the Chiefs are going to be favored in just about every game they play in this year. They also get the Commanders at home. They do have to play at Buffalo and they have to play at Dallas. But they played Dallas late in the season, and based on history, there's a better than fair chance that Dak won't even play. He'll be hurt by then. So, yes, a daunting schedule, but maybe not quite the gauntlet that the 6th hardest schedule in the NFL projects itself to be. So let's dive into the roster a little bit. They did have a couple free agent signings. They brought in Jalen Moore, the left tackle from San Francisco, in their fire sale in the offseason. And they also brought in Christian Fulton, the cornerback from the Chargers. But that was about it. A lot of what they were missing last year was due to injury. Of course, Rashee Rice went out. Pacheco didn't get back in until late in the season. So, and they had other guys get dinged up along the way as well. But injury played a lot of what the Chiefs were missing from a personnel standpoint. Their draft, they picked up Josh Simmons, the tackle out of Ohio State, with the next to last pick in the first round. And this guy might end up being one of the real steals of the draft. And you say, well, he's a first-round pick. How's he a steal? Well, this guy probably would have been a top 10, maybe even top 5 pick had he not been coming off a torn patellar tendon that he suffered in October of last season. So great value pick there to give Patrick Mahomes some more support. And then Omar Norman Lott, defensive tackle out of Tennessee, ball for life, in the second round. And this is another big body road grader, bulldozer type player that is deceptively fast and quick for his size. So he's going to be a great fit in there with Chris Jones. And then they also picked up Ashton Gillette, the edge rusher out of Louisville in the third round, along with Noel Williams, a cornerback out of Cal in the third. They did pick up a wide receiver, Jalen Royals, who is out of Utah State in the fourth round. But, man, if there's a team that is heavy on wide receivers, it's the Kansas City Chiefs. They have a boatload of people in their wide receiver room. So I don't know how much impact that Jalen Royals is going to have on the season. Obviously, with injury risk, and some of these guys are getting a little older, that he may see the field, but all in all, don't see that being a real impact. But these other dudes can definitely play and play early. We talked about injuries, and they had more than their share of them. Still pull off winning 15 games, made the Super Bowl. They didn't cover a lot of spreads last year. I don't know that they'll cover a lot of spreads this year. This is not the high-powered, high-flying, run and gun type offense that we saw out of Mahomes in his first few seasons. This is very much a run first, pound the rock, play good defense, and then let Mahomes work his magic when he has to. So, it's probably not going to be a real high scoring offense, but they're going to do what they did last year, and they're just going to pummel people and beat them into submission. So while I don't think they'll cover many spreads, this team has only not won 12 or more games one time since Patrick Mahomes took over the helm. And I don't see that changing this year. So 11.5 wins at plus money, yeah, give me the over. All right, next we're going to slide out to the West Coast, to Lipstick City, and the Los Angeles Chargers entering year 2 of the Jim Harbaugh regime. Did a great job last year. He took a team that was 5-12 under that idiot Brandon Staley in 2023, turned that into 11 wins, and odds makers this year have them at 9.5, also juiced minus 130 to the under. Well, on paper, it looks like that's an easy over. So let's dig into it. So the first part of the season last year, it really looked like a Jim Harbaugh team, like a Michigan Jim Harbaugh team, where they ran the ball 973 times and only passed when they were in third and long. But then somebody mentioned to Jim Harbaugh, hey, you've got a pretty good quarterback. This Herbert kid can sling it. And that offense turned around, and they really started cooking down the stretch. And made a lot more plays in the passing game. And then we saw Ladd McConkey just kind of blow up out of nowhere and instantly became like a fantasy football cult hero. So offense is good. They only came in ranked 20th overall in total offense, but I think that number is a little misleading because of their approach to the season early on, where it was just run, run, run. Defensively, they were just outside the top 10. They were 11th in total defense, and that clearly is an impact of Jim Harbaugh's presence. He loves to play bully ball at the line of scrimmage on both sides. And so he definitely made an impact on that defense. When you look at their roster from a free agent standpoint, man, they were busy. They bring in Mekhi Becton, guard from the Eagles. And then they went and just pretty much took who they wanted off the Pittsburgh Steelers roster, bringing in Najee Harris, Dante Jackson, cornerback, and then also Mike Williams makes his return to the Chargers. Didn't fare so well in Pittsburgh. Feel like he didn't get utilized very much. Made a few big catches, but I think he's going to feel much more at home with his quarterback in Justin Herbert. And then they also brought in Tyler Conklin from the Jets, who also showed some flashes last year in spite of the pathetic quarterback play that he had to tolerate for a couple seasons. So it'll be interesting to see how Conklin fits into Harbaugh's scheme. From a draft standpoint, very solid draft. Marion Hampton, the running back out of North Carolina, was their first pick. And this guy's a beast. He's like a dump truck running. He is a load. and feel like that he may even be the back by the time we get midseason because, Najee Harris, great in college, but as Pittsburgh fans will tell you, he was not necessarily special in Pittsburgh. They also drafted Trey Harris, wide receiver from Ole Miss, in the second round, and a pick that I think is going to be pretty impactful on this team, and that's Jamari Caldwell. As a defensive tackle out of Oregon. They got him in the third round, and I thought he was undervalued. I thought he probably should have went higher because, man, this dude is a load. He's 332 pounds, and he is that just hard-nosed, blow people off the line of scrimmage type guy that Harbaugh loves. And they lost Poona Ford to free agency. He just, went to a different zip code in L.A. playing for the Rams now. So he's a good 20-ish pounds heavier than Ford, and this guy's got nasty written all over him. So he is definitely going to make an impact on that defensive line. They also drafted Kyle Kennard, who was an edge rusher out of South Carolina in the fourth round. Another one of those bullies that'll just beat you into submission as the game goes on. So they definitely went after some key pieces on defense, and I think they brought in enough offensive weapons to at least have some depth. And again, I think Omarion Hampton is going to be a stud. So there's a free fantasy flyer for you right there. So all these great things that we just talked about with the Chargers, solid defense, a good defense that probably got a little better, and added a couple weapons on offense. So you may think, well, Hammer, what's the problem? Well, here's the problem. So back half of that schedule, they finished the year with the Eagles, at Kansas City, at Dallas, Houston, and at Denver. And other than the Cowboys, what do all those teams have in common? Well, they all made the playoffs. So when I see that much of a back-end schedule with that many playoff teams, two division rivals, both on the road, man, that's tough. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you that they're going to go 0-5 in that stretch, but they could. So for me, that means you got to win a whole lot of games in the first half of your schedule. And I'm not crazy about sitting on 7 or 8, 9 wins and then facing that stretch to close out the season. So I really wanted to take the over here with the Chargers, and honestly, I hope I'm wrong. But I'm going to have to take under 9.5. With that schedule on the back half, I'm just not confident in taking them at 10 wins. All right, next we'll move over to Denver and the Sean Payton-led Denver Broncos. Sean coming in his second year with Bo Nix at the helm. It's funny, and I'm a big fan of both these guys, but, Jaden Daniels, of course, got all the accolades and all the love, all the flowers from last year, and rightfully so. I mean, the kid absolutely balled out, took them way deeper in the playoffs than anybody could have expected. But, man, I'm going to be honest with you. I think Bo Nix deserved a lot more accolades and love than what he saw. I was certainly skeptical of him in college at Auburn, but then he goes to Oregon and, man, really just polished his game and turned into a pretty elite player. I mean, he was a Heisman finalist. He was a first-round draft pick in the NFL, and, all he did was go out and lead Denver to a 10-win season last year. So 9.5 is their win total. And I don't know what's up with Vegas and the AFC West. They also are juiced to the under at -130. A little puzzled by this. Did they think they're just going to just beat the snot out of each other all year and not going to have anybody left standing at the end of the season? I don't know. I don't get it. The Broncos, from an offensive standpoint, right there with the Chargers, they were 19th, but the defense was ranked 7th overall in total defense. So all three of these teams were basically top 10 defenses last year. So maybe Vegas is onto something here. I don't know.
If you can't spot the sucker in your first half hour at the table.
One thing that Chargers do have playing in their favor is their schedule. They are about middle of the road. Their schedule's ranked 14th in the NFL, but it's also the easiest schedule in the division. So, and I think, that's a relative term to say it's the 14th easiest or it's the 16th hardest schedule, or 18th hardest schedule, I mean. So, but a lot of it has to do with not when you play and where you play. They play the same teams for the most part as the rest of their conference, but it's when they get them and where they get them that factors into that. So schedule-wise, they're much favorable compared certainly to Kansas City with some of that, brutal road games that they have to play. So it's just a matter if Denver can maintain and take advantage of those gifts on the schedule when they come up. Look at the defense first. They were just elite. I think that number 7 ranking is a little misleading because this team was number 2 in the NFL in fewest yards allowed per play, and they were the 3rd best team in points allowed. So defense is pretty stacked, and based on what they did in free agency and in their draft, I think that is going to continue. When you look at their free agents, the defense just got better. They went out and got Talanoa Hufanga. That's always hard to say. Safety from San Francisco. So this division pretty much just plucked the 49ers roster clean. Thanks a lot. And then they got Dre Greenlaw also from the Niners, the linebacker. And they also poached Evan Ingram out of free agency, the tight end from Jacksonville, who was an absolute fantasy beast the last couple seasons. So with the nature of the offense that Sean Payton runs, Ingram could be quite the factor for this team. Draft-wise, well, if you compare it to the rest of the AFC West, it's probably the weakest draft of the 4 teams. However, what they did get was elite talent with their first 2 picks. So as we all know, Patrick Surtain won the Defensive Player of the Year award last year. So when your all-star cornerback wins Player of the Year, what do? You go out and you get another one. Jahdae Barron, the cornerback from Texas in the first round, and just also happened to be the Thorpe Award winner for the best cornerback in the nation. So lining up in the secondary this year for the Denver Broncos, you've got the Defensive Player of the Year, and you have the top cornerback from college the year before. So good luck throwing the ball on this team. And they went out and got R.J. Harvey, the running back out of Central Florida, in the second round. And then they added Pat Bryant, wide receiver from Illinois, in the 3rd. And I'm going to tell you right now, do not sleep on Pat Bryant. Yes, I know that wide receiver room is pretty loaded in Denver, but mark my words, make a little note on your fantasy draft sheets when you get into those later rounds. I'm telling you, Pat Bryant's somebody that we need to remember the name, because I think it's very possible that he could boot Marvin Mims out of his spot and start for this team fairly early in the season. There's no question R.J. Harvey is going to start. J.K. Dobbins came over in free agency, and, let's be honest, his best days are behind him. Unfortunately, he's coming kind of from the Nick Chubb world where his injuries eventually will, force him out. He did have a respectable season in Los Angeles last year, but there's a reason that he's not there. So R.J. Harvey definitely going to be the starter. And then Savion Jones, the edge rusher out of LSU, also in the 3rd round. So, man, some great talent on defense, a couple impact players on offense. And I'll be honest with y'all, except for playing at Philly and at Kansas City, I think Denver's going to be favored in every game they play in this season. And with this offense clicking, Bo Nix with another, year under his belt, and a great defense that got even better. I don't know what Vegas is thinking on this one, but over 9.5 wins at plus money, yeah, I'm going to hammer that. Give me the over. All right, and I know we're talking about the AFC West and the NFL and all that good stuff, but I got my hat on here, which I normally do, granted, but made sure I especially had this one on. So for all my Vol for lifers and Vol Twitter friends out there, Legend Bay, 4-star athlete out of Texas, just committed to the University of Tennessee. So as Josh Heupel would say, boom. All right, so we will wrap up in Sin City, my favorite vacation spot, in the Las Vegas Raiders. Pete Carroll era begins in Vegas, and he's bringing a familiar face in with him in Geno Smith to run his offense. Raiders had a tough go of it last year. They only won 4 games, went 4-13. At the time I prepped all this and made my bet, the Raiders' win total was 6.5. Well, I'm seeing now on some sport books the number is bumped up to 7.5. So my odds reflect 6.5 over at minus 130. Under would be plus 100. The latest odds I saw on 7.5 was minus 155 to the under. Okay? So keep that in mind if you're silly enough to actually listen to what I'm saying and take my betting advice. Keep that in mind. So that tells me that Vegas thinks the Raiders are going to win 7 games, right? Because there were minus odds at 6.5 over, and they're minus odds under at 7.5. So let's see if we can find 7 wins or 8 wins on this schedule. Well, it starts out pretty brutal. They have some very tough road games to start out the season. And, this team's got red flags all over the place for me because you have a new head coach, you have a new quarterback. But with Geno being familiar with Pete Carroll, it's not as dramatic, but still there's all those little things that you have to take into account. Gelling with your center, cadence, snap count, check with me's, audibles, getting everybody lined up right, receivers getting used to how the ball's coming out of his hand. There's just a million little things that a lot of people don't necessarily take into consideration when you have a new quarterback and still a new system, new team, and a new head coach. So, yikes. When you look at what the Raiders did in free agency, not very much. They brought in Jeremy Chin, the safety from Washington, and they brought in Alex Kappa, guard from Cincinnati. And then while they were at it, they figured, hey, we're already in Cincinnati. Let's go ahead and snatch Jermaine Pratt as well, the former linebacker for the Bengals. So free agency, really not anything that that sticks out. I mean, all 3 of these guys are going to start, so that's good. Filled some void, but none of them really ring the bell. But then when you look at their draft, ding, ding, ding. Outstanding draft by the Raiders. Of course, the highlight player out of this draft was the number 6 overall pick, and that's running back Ashton Jeanty out of Boise State. And, man, you talk about a bull in a china shop. Nobody could slow this guy down last year. Will that translate over to the NFL? Yep. This guy's going to be a beast. And there's going to be people, trading their children to get this guy in fantasy. So Genty's the real deal. No reservations about him in the least. And then from there, they took a pair of wide receivers. They took Jack Beck out of TCU. And they took Dante Thornton, Vol for life, out of the University of Tennessee. If you're not familiar with Dante Thornton, he was originally at Oregon, transferred to Tennessee, played 2 seasons there. This kid is 6'5", 6'6", and he can fly. So perfect weapon for Geno in this offense. He can stretch the field, and he will be very difficult for NFL corners to deal with. They also took a pair of offensive linemen. They got Caleb Rogers out of Texas Tech, and then also Charles Grant out of William and Mary. But wait, there's more. They took 2 SEC defensive tackles, Tonka Hemingway out of South Carolina, and also J.J. Pegas out of Ole Miss. And yes, I said that right. Go watch his YouTube video. So when you kind of look across their roster, I mean, they've got some pretty decent talent on this team. But an issue with that talent is this team is young, man. They are the 12th youngest team in the NFL, and they average just about 26 years old. Last year, they only had 6 players on their roster that was 30 or older. So this is a very young team. So young team, new head coach, new quarterback, new schemes, both sides of the ball. Where are we going to find these 7 or 8 wins? Well, if I look at their schedule, I got 4 games that I can circle and say I feel pretty confident that they're going to win these. I think they can win at the Colts. I think they can beat the Titans because that game's in Las Vegas. And believe me, I have made the Nashville to Vegas flight many times. It's not fun. They get the Browns and they get the Giants, and all those games are at home. So the only road game that I'm looking at that I feel confident in saying I would pick the Raiders is the Colts. When you look at the rest of the schedule, I don't think the Raiders are going to be favored in any of those games. So any other game that they win is going to have to be considered an upset. And it's certainly possible. We all know today's NFL, 1 or 2 guys are hurt, dinged up, somebody has a bad game. Anything can happen. But we're looking at this in June, not in the middle of October. So I don't see 7 wins on this schedule. I sure don't see 8 wins on this schedule, at least not this year. I think they had a tremendous draft. They brought in a few pieces that's going to help them in the short term. And I feel like that they're definitely on track to get this franchise back to respectable. And let's be honest, man, come on. The NFL is better when the Raiders are good. I just don't think it's going to be this year. So whether it's 6.5, 7.5, it doesn't matter to me. You know what? I'd even play this at 5.5. If you can find some good plus money on under 5.5 wins, I mean, I'd throw some beer money or something on it because I'm really struggling to find more than 4 or 5 wins on this schedule. Give me the under. All right, so just a quick recap on the AFC West. We've got Kansas City at 11.5 wins. I'm taking the over. We've got the Chargers set at 9.5 wins. I'm going to take the under. The Denver Broncos, 9.5 wins. Give me the over on that plus money. And then the Las Vegas Raiders at whatever number you find, 6.5, 7.5. It's not going to happen. Give me the under. Gang, thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. Feel free to give me a follow over on Twitter. I follow everybody back. I don't care who you pull for, what your team is, even if it's the Cowboys. I'll still follow you back. I just love this game. I love to interact with other fans. And we love to hear your feedback on the episodes. If you watch this on YouTube, would love if you hit the like and subscribe button. Let you know when new content's coming out. And love to read comments on there as well. And, of course, you can find this on just about every major streaming platform for podcasts. If you're a Spotify member, you can find the link to that on my Twitter page. Thanks again. Till next time.